You said I've got all these questions for you. I was sat thinking I've got to answer these questions, and then I bloody got bollocked.
Well, listen
I
to the
got to
beginning.
write, tell you the first person told me off in 20 years. I said, my gosh,
What an intro to podcast two from Gary Stretch. First person to told me off in 20 years.
you are the first one who told me off in 20 years.
It's the two G's. We are back. It's number two. We've had a little absence. I've been in the Middle East. Gary's been in Bulgaria. There's amazing things going. Gary's giving his master classes in acting in Bulgaria at the moment, and getting his movie together. And looking.
Our move together.
All right, our movie. That it's your
You have
movie.
to get used to
I'm
that,
just,
Gareth.
as some of my famous acting friends say, "Oh, you're doing him a favor, are you?" I said, "No, he's doing me a favor because
Mutual.
he's getting me out of the fight world for a while and into the imaginary fight world." Um, and that's what I want to talk to you about today, Gary. We got stuck into psychology in our first chat together on the Two Gs podcast one. Let me ask you how you are first of all.
I'm good. I'm good. Like yourself. We've been touching base throughout the weeks, but both of us have been crazy busy. So it's nice to finally sit down with you and say hello. But yeah,
The
good.
weird the
I
weird thing
complain.
is,
I complain when nothing's happening. So when things are happening, you've got to enjoy it.
you took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what you did right then. But last time we
Quick
talked,
question, Gareth.
yeah,
Quick question.
yeah.
The trip. Tell me, how was the feeling being an Englishman with all of the shit that we went through with Tyson Fury when Anthony Joshua went and flew that flag for us?
It was quite unbelievable, really. The power, the precision, the poise, the destructive nature of Anthony Joshua, his destructive spirit out in full force. I was sitting. I sat. I had a seat in the VIPs, about 4 seats behind Frank Warren, Tyson Fury, His Excellency Turkey Al Sheikh, Eddie Hearn, Paris Fury, all there. Egis Klimas, Usyk's manager, 3 seats behind, in front. And I had a desk around the other side where I was tapping up stories very quickly to file on edition for the Telegraph. So I saw the Nick Ball fight close up against Ray Vargas. I thought Nick Ball won 114, 112 because he knocked Vargas down twice in the second half of the fight and won the last 6 rounds. I scored Zhang and Parker as a draw. It was a very close fight. Parker down twice, but came back in the fight. And Anthony Joshua, well, I saw the punch from behind him, that last punch that started down just below his hip and ended up, it felt like outside the ring on the other side through Francis Ngannou's face. And literally, when you see someone's leg buckle and they go over it like that, it was almost like
Yeah.
he'd been shot, if I can
Yeah.
put it in a brutal way. It was like a giant kind of
Bolt of
monstrous,
lightning.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a bolt of lightning, exactly. I think Anthony Joshua is back. He was great to be around all week. I mean, I got to see him 3 of the 4 days. I spoke to Ben Davison on his own as well as trainer. It really, really does build up for very exciting contest now between Fury and Usyk, and then hopefully Fury and Joshua. And I hope, Gary, I think the big thing is that we don't have to wait a year for Joshua against Fury. That's the big thing.
I hope I hope it's a good fight. I hope that Fury well beats him. And I think he will, believe it or not, contrary to the negative backlash of the Ngannou fight. But I think Fury will well beat him. And I hope that Usyk will take a sidestep, maybe take some money to sit out for one and fight the next fight.
Or fight the winner.
Yeah, I think that would be ideal. I don't think it's also ideal for a fighter if he depending on how he loses, if he loses, if he gets beat convincingly, I think it's better that he sits out one, and not to jump straight back. It's a dangerous idea. So we'll see. Time will tell.
Unfortunately, I have this feeling that it's going to be very tight. They're both going to be boxing each other, Fury and Usyk, and I've got one part of me sees it as being quite a tight, controversial draw that Fury comes behind to tighten up during the fight. That Usyk's a buzzing wasp to begin with, and and landing punches from weird angles. But then again, Fury, with having cut his eye, I hope he goes after it like he did against Wilder in the second Wilder fight, and tries to put hands on Fury, on Usyk, and make it kind of decisive, if you like. Because the biggest fight in world boxing right now is definitely Fury against Joshua.
I see it different, Gareth. I think Fury beats him up. I think it'd be nothing like anyone expects. I think he'll beat him up. I was
Too
shocked with
big,
the
too
Daniel
strong.
Dubois fight.
Yeah.
Well, the Daniel Dubois fight showed a lot of kinks in Usyk's armor for
Yeah.
me, complaining and non-stop complaining. And then whether or not it was a low blow, it certainly wasn't in the nuts. It was borderline. It could have been legally low if it's below the line, which is technically low, but it certainly wasn't in the privates. And to do the behavior he did shows a great weakness for me. And so I just thought, and if you watch the Derek Chisora fight, when he got roughed up, he got unsettled. He was not, it was not a great fight for him. So I think with a big, strong man, and Fury is very good at leaning and pulling and inside. I think he'll do a job on him. And not that that I want to see that. I just have a funny feeling. I've been pretty accurate. I told everybody I had a podcast, my podcast, the Sugar Silk and Stretch podcast, and I told everyone on that destruction job, Joshua Ngannou, 1 round, maybe 2 max, but he'll put him into Planet Zoom, and everyone's laughing at me. And of course, they're not laughing now. But yeah, I think it's going to be a surprise to Usyk. I think it'll be a beatdown.
Crazy of Ngannou, by the way, finally to switch to southpaw so early against Joshua and just allow that right down the pipe. Really.
What do you think next for Ngannou, Gareth?
What's that?
What do you think he's next? Do you think he's out of boxing now?
Oh, they'll put him in against the loser of somebody. If Wilder loses to somebody next, they'll put him in with Wilder, I'm sure. But he's got the PFL deal, Professional Fighters League deal, where he's their agent for Africa, and I think he gets a 50% share on any pay-per-view revenue. I think he'll probably want to try and get another good performance in boxing before he goes back to MMA, because to go back after what was devastation for him, really, kind of in marketing terms, doesn't work that well.
It's a tough ask to come back in boxing for him. It must be psychologically, it's going to be a rough ride to come back. And if it happens again, then of course the journey ends there.
And while we're on fighting and acting, and the mention of Alexander Usyk and Ukraine, I just obviously the Oscars have just been, and I know the Oscars are a very big marketing policy employ itself, but a huge part of the film industry. But I was delighted that 20 Days in Mariupol, the documentary about the first 20 days of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, won the documentary award. I was really pleased about that. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but
our travel and work schedule, I missed everything. Yeah,
it's really worth seeing. I'm just delighted for them. Now, acting and boxing. Last time we got into why you're making a movie at the moment, or why you're making this particular movie, Upswing, having met a guru up in the mountains in Bulgaria who had written bizarrely in this dystopian journey, which brings you to your reality at the moment, a storyline for you that was designed for you, that he wanted to meet you. It feels like destiny that you've met this man. We talked about psychology in depth last time, and I didn't get the chance to ask you, and because I want to tell your life story through this as well, and bits of mine, as a friendship and all of those things, and a shared kind of love of spiritual journeys, if I can put them that, spiritual and warrior journeys. How did, and I'd like you to tell that story that happened in Hollywood when you were in Hollywood way back when. Why did boxing leave you, and movie stardom and acting approach you into your life?
It's very funny. My whole career has been mapped out in some way. I never planned any of it. So, you know, things happened and they were out of my control. So I just followed, you know, what happened in life. So, you know, the acting, I was a shy kid. Boxing, because I was a troubled kid, I was forced to box and to discipline. So I was pushed into that again, and I never planned it. All the way to retiring from acting and from boxing and getting into acting was a meeting in Hollywood by mistake. No, but I was parked in a car and I saw an old lady who needed some help, and I got out and helped her. Got into a dispute. She was in a parking dispute with two kind of gangbanger type young thuggy kids. And I helped her, had a little bit of a dispute with the kids, and they backed down. And she gave
One
me a
pulled
number.
a knife. Well, one pulled a knife as well, didn't they? Or was that
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They were arguing over a parking meter. She had the right. She'd gone past it and was backing in, and they tried to steal it. And it was stupid. It was raining. He got a little bit violent. He hit the car. He snapped the wiper off a car, very loud. And I got out at that point and said, "Hey, slow down," you know. And he pulled a knife, and I dealt with him. And but they left, and she and I had a conversation, and then she gave me a number and said, "Let's have lunch." She was an older lady in her 70s. I sat in the car. My friend, who was an actor, who I was waiting for him, who was on an audition. He just picked me up from the airport. He came, and I didn't even tell him about the incident, but we're driving off, and he sees the name and the number, and he says, "Where'd you get the number?" I said, "Just met this lady." And he, of course, tells me she's a famous teacher. He wants to study with her. I set up a meeting with him. It didn't work out. She's very particular and old. She said to me, I'll never forget, she said, "You know, Gary, the one thing I value the most is time at my age, and I spend it wisely. I don't teach a lot of people anymore. She teaches a lot of the great actors, but she has also she brings in new kids, and you know, she's very nurturing, but she's very specific. Anyway, she didn't take him. She took me by accident. She just invited me to sit in a class while I was on holiday, and the class changed my life. And I became interested in it. And the funny thing is, Gareth, we talk about psychology, which I study a lot. You can probably see books behind me. I do read a lot in my old age, but the core essence of my fight career was to prove I was worthy of something. So I would, when my mother left, I think a little hole was penetrated in my heart. Something I felt like a piece of me was missing when my mother left as a child. My father was a great man who raised three boys, but I missed my mother, and I felt I had no worth. And so boxing, I was trying to prove I was something. And no matter how many men I stood above, it never filled the little hole. Now, the interesting thing is, years later, I had a fight at York Hall against a guy called Seamus Casey. He was a you know, the backbone of the game. He'd fight anyone. He had like 60 losses, maybe 30 wins. Everyone's fought him, everyone's beat him. All the contenders have gone through Seamus Casey. And they put me in with him. And I really hurt him. It was probably my best ever performance, even though he was a journeyman. I felt, and I've never seen the fight. I know it was recorded somewhere, but I'd love to see it. But I heard a primal scream when I hit him in the audience, and it was very specific. It was either his mother, his wife, his sister. I don't know. It was just a noise that was. I thought my journey to, you know, it's an in-depth psychological thing. You know, I know I'm a boxing that happens, but there was something in it that stuck with me. As I got into film, as a fighter, you protect everything. When you get hurt, you show nothing. And I was very, you know, I never cried into my child. It was weakness to cry. My father said, "Don't cry." You know, all this. All you need as an actor, it's like an onion. The more layers you peel off, the more you reveal yourself. Is the scariest thing.
Mm.
So you should really be allowed to be seen. And so there's great break. I'm always taking challenges. And so it was a great challenge to prove myself. It was also a great challenge to be seen. It was the opposite. And so there was a fascination with that. And both careers, I think, have helped me become a better person in my life. And I don't, contrary to maybe public belief, or people don't know me, but even as a fighter, they thought I was flashy. And maybe I had a flashy style, but I was quite a shy kid. But as a human, I've been really, I've spent many years trying to better myself. I'm not a perfect man, as you know. Boys are boys, and I've made 100 mistakes, maybe a million. But I always try and make myself better for myself, not for anybody else. And acting and the arts and the profession I'm in has been a great tool for me to kind of try and become a better human being.
So, in a weird way, what you're saying there, which I find fascinating, is that um, as a boxer, the job is almost to only show one aspect of yourself, which is the warrior. Really, it's a
Strength.
massive shell, a massive shield, strength, resilience, stoicism, courage, resilience to pain. But they're all qualities that other human beings admire, though, as well, aren't they? On
Sure.
the surface, But like I say, as you peel the layers of the onion off, that's what you've wanted to do in your life more than anything. And you say you've had to do that as an actor, whatever it is now, 25 movies, 30 movies, maybe it's more. I mean,
40, 50,
how many?
maybe 40.
Maybe 40, but 25 years,
Yeah.
25 years, nearly 30 years of acting now. And do you feel like the layers of you are kind of shedding all the time?
No, Gareth, it's a false analogy. It's like you get it. I've walked around London streets with you and I've seen the attention you get. People love you, but they don't know you. And
Mm,
it's a shallow token. If you really reveal yourself, warts and all, and they still love you, then you have a friend,
yeah.
you know?
Mm,
But we get in this business that we're in, they only see the surface and they're attracted to that, but they don't love us. They just like us, or they want to be us, or they admire, or they whatever it is, it's a bit of glamour. They
something
don't really
entertains them. Something entertains them. Yeah.
people don't realize when me and you are going having a glass of tequila in London that you've just got off a flight, you've been working for 60 hours straight. You haven't slept in 3 days. And they think, what a life Gareth has. I'm thinking now, I'm happy he's coming to meet me for a drink, but he must be exhausted. Like, I think I feel bad to even say, let's go and have dinner because you're like literally getting off the airport, out the airport, driving into London, getting to see me. And I'm thinking, the guy's just come in from Far East and he said, he must be exhausted. But they don't have a clue what you go through to be you. And then also, your relationships, you know, your loved ones, your girlfriend, your children, they don't get to see you, and you're trying to fit everything into you. It's not glamorous. Movie sets. I'm on a set. I did a movie in Belize, army pictures. Like, I was in a swamp for 2 weeks, up to here. My my feet were white. When you get them in the water and the
Yeah,
and they
white
turn
prunes.
they white and I had mosquito bites. I had to go to hospital, so poisoned with bites up from all my leg. I was in swamp water for 2 weeks. I almost died from infection.
What's the movie? Because we've got to watch it for you doing that.
Oh, I don't even remember. It was like 15 years ago. It was a with remember the kid, black guy, Jameel White, I think his name. He's a comedy guy. He was Urkel. There's a famous TV show in America. I'll have to look it up on my
I'll look it
resume.
up while we're talking. I'll look it up while we're
It
talking.
was yeah, I will find. But it was anyway. Every movie I've ever done. It's it's not. I pinch myself and feel how grateful I am to work. There's a lot of better actors than me are not working, but it's not glamorous at all. The hours, sometimes it's amazing, but most of the time it's hurry up and wait. You sat for hours. I don't have a problem with it. My dad was a plumber working minus degrees under floorboards in winter in very, very tough work. And, so if I'm sat in a trailer for 6, 7 hours a day, drinking coffee, reading my script, I don't have a problem. Some actors don't want to wait. I've been here all day, I feel like saying, shut the fuck up. It's like, it's an easy job in that respect, but it's tedious, it's long, there's a lot of work. Depending on the film you make, I may get up at 5 to get to set for 6. I may finish at 6 at night. I maybe get something to eat, and at 8 o'clock, I may have 10 pages to learn for tomorrow morning. And if I don't learn them, Gareth, there's no movie. You know, if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, it's cut and they're dead. Every day you lose on a movie is minimum 100 grand. If we don't get it shot, it's 100 for the crew and the this and the locate. You're under massive amounts of pressure. I'm not the best person with learning lines. I know a lot of actors, but it's a lot of work and it doesn't end. And at the end of movies, it's exhausting. So again, it's a luxury for most jobs, but it certainly isn't glamorous. If people want to be an actor, the process to become a good actor is it to work in itself, and then the actual work in itself is work. So it's not all fun and glam. A lot of the great actors I have great respect for. Um, I once sat in a flight with that Robert De Niro, and he was in 11 hour flight. He was sat next to me, and I'm very sensitive to people. He said hello, I said hello, but I felt he wasn't in a talkative mood.
Yeah.
And we had 11 hours, never said a word. He never said a word. And he had a script. And just before we landed, he went to the toilet, and I looked at the script. He was on page 2. And he'd written a million notes. I thought, that's the work he does on 2 pages. He was still working and kept going back and back.
And was he doing this?
The amount of
When you looked across, was he going?
yeah. But it's a massive amount of work, and I think you've got to be quite intelligent. We all get the same material. They say a performance is what's not written. It's what your imagination brings to we all get the skeleton, we all get the script, and then we have to add the meat. And then there's choices. You make intelligent choices or interesting choices. They say the definition of acting is to be truthful in an imaginary circumstance, but there's lots of ways of being truthful, and you got to find the more interesting ways because you're being filmed, and it's either boring or it's interesting. It could be the way someone's dad could die and he could just sit like that, but they don't want to look at you for 10 minutes like that, So you have to find interesting truths, and that comes from the imagination. And so, it's a process. And I think most good actors are very, very intelligent people. And I think most fighters are very intelligent people. Like Tyson, I think is a very intelligent guy, maybe not so educated, but I think he's a smart, smart guy.
Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, you mean? Or
Tyson, Mike Tyson.
Mike
I
Tyson.
think Fury's a very bright guy, of course, so you wouldn't be where he is without. But if you look at Tyson, Mike Tyson,
Yeah.
he's like an encyclopedia on boxing,
Yeah.
you know?
But he's also an encyclopedia spiritually as well. And in the recent conversations I've had with him, we've talked about darkness and light, and that however much light comes into your life, there's always darkness coming towards you as well. And one of the things I said to him recently out in Saudi Arabia was, please remember when you're in your moments of darkness. There's a lot of people in his own family that love him deeply, and he's a very beautiful human being, frankly, in many ways. That just remember how many people out there actually have a love for you. Millions and millions of people have a love for you in your moments of darkness where you don't feel great about yourself. That there's people that admire the transformation you've gone through in your life, because
people have gone into boxing because of him.
And people, and even now, with the announcement that he's going to fight Jake Paul, we can go into that for a moment, because I've got a question I want to ask you about acting and boxing. Even now, we want our Mike Tyson to beat up the young upstart YouTuber and knock out Jake Paul, don't we? That's why we're going to watch it on July the 20th.
We'll get into that one in a second, which is something I have many things to say about. But let me ask you something, Gareth. I know a lot about your life, and I know a little bit about a lot about your career. But these days, you've got more and more and more closer, and boxing has become your thing. it wasn't always your thing. I know. I mean, you've been a great writer in many subjects. What is it that has drawn you to this fight game that's compelled you to get more and more involved?
Well, I know the warrior inside myself. I know the fearlessness inside myself, and I think one is admiration for the call that the warrior feels, and but also secondarily, I've learned that there's a great intimacy that you can share with another human being who doesn't often know why they fight, but I can sometimes pick apart and open up what the narrative of their life is, and there's a great appreciation in that. And sometimes I don't mean you're teaching someone to talk about their own lives, but you're opening them up to the realization of why they actually fight. And because a lot of people don't want to work that out about themselves. I think it's theatre. I think it's drama. I love the occasion. I think there's something in my DNA that understands fighting. I don't know where it comes from, deep in my DNA, because I believe in the past, not so much the future, because it's in us. You know, I worship the sun and the moon because they're in front of me. I see them diurnally. I feel my DNA. I feel things in my half sleep about where I've been and what's died in me before and what's been reborn and all those kind of things through physical manifestation that then is, I don't know whether it's intellectualized or romanticized, or I don't know if this is explaining, but this is how I feel about fight sports. And I feel like I know what it is to commit to oblivion, if you like. And what it feels like to compartmentalize fear when fear comes. And you know, I've had my moments when the super ego takes over, or the super id, as I would call it, and you're in a scenario and then you're out of a scenario because you know you can manifest the life energy in that moment to get into that situation and out of it again. You know, I don't want to go too deeply into the kind of deep psychosis of violence inside me, because it's there, I think, as a father, as a grandfather, as a son of parents that I love, and knowing the violence that I've actually enacted as a sportsman. Do you know what I mean? That's compartmentalized within. I mean, the last thing any of us ever want to do is to get involved in a piece of violence on the street that ends up erratically changing our lives. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes you're in that moment. Listen, Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee were two major heroes for me growing up. Bruce Lee, the little guy that, you know, moved like water, that still had a rose for the girl, that fought the guys bigger than him. And Muhammad Ali, who, because I was in Berlin with my parents and we used to get British, American Forces TV in the early and mid 70s, we saw Ali in black and white. And the guy was something special. Plus, even when I was a little boy, I always begged my father to let me stay up and watch Sports Night, and boxing was the last thing on Sports Night, if you recall, on a Wednesday night. Just something about it, the call of the warrior, and to be able to be close. I think there's an extraordinary vulnerability about fighters that I feel empathy for as well. I mean, I could go on for hours about this. You can ask me this question every time, because I could give you more and more depth to it every time. And I'm going to throw it back at you. And I think the older I've got, the more my storytelling has been appreciated in the sport I'm in. You know, I'm 33 years in now. Weirdly, I feel like a little bit of an underachiever. I'd like to have done more with music. I want to do more with acting. I want to create more documentaries, but I think we're both in the time of our life now where we can get more involved in projects. All you want is people around you that are very good at what they do at this age and this stage in life. I'm going to throw it back at you. Thank you for asking me a question this week.
Oh, no, I'm sorry for last week.
We've only got 5 minutes left of this podcast. Okay? I've got 2 more questions for you today. What did boxing teach you about acting? What do you draw on when you're acting from your 25 years that, or 20 years that you had in boxing, first of all?
Preparation. Fights are won in the gym. Film is won the work on the script. My teacher used to say, "There's no such thing as a star. The only thing that shines is the work. Do the work." So it's a lot of work to get to be good. You know, you can wing it to a point, but that's maybe one movie you get lucky. But to have a career, there's a craft, there's a science, as there is to boxing, as there is to film, as to acting. There's a science, there's a script, there's a process, and it's a lot of work. And the discipline of boxing, if an accountant got up at 5 in the morning and ran and ate well and went to bed early and studied every day for hours to become a better accountant, the principles of what we do as fighters to get better, you put that in any profession, you'll be a better plumber, you'll be a better account. You know, if you put the time that we put in and the effort. And so boxing gave me a great discipline, and I crossed that into film. Boxing gave me courage when I was afraid, because we're human beings, but we don't always get in situations where we're afraid. Boxing forces you to be afraid all the time when you know, unless you're not human. So it's constantly putting pressure for you to step up. And in film, it's the same. You know, to be vulnerable is a very scary thing, to show everything and not be afraid of how you judge. So boxing gave me the courage, or not the courage, it gave me the ability to handle the courage, and it gave me the discipline to do the work. And I've crossed that into film.
When you look back on boxing, I've got two more questions I want to ask you about Mike Tyson and Jake Paul before we end today. We've only got 2.5 minutes left of this 30-minute podcast. When you look back, do you miss boxing and wonder if it ever wonder or ever consider, was it tougher than acting?
I think anything, to be good at anything, I think it's the same in anything you do. Even to be a good plumber, you've got to be, you know, to be great at anything. It takes a special person, because it's extra work to be, anyone can do it okay. So I don't think it's any more difficult, either one. Both have the challenges. That's that question. Uh, Something else was
Yeah,
there?
the final one today. Obviously, Mike Tyson's going to face Jake Paul. He's 57 years old. He hasn't fought for 19 years. He obviously had the exhibition bout with Roy Jones Jr., which I don't know if you saw it, but it wasn't amazing. Um, do we want Mike to knock out the young upstart? Do we have objections to him fighting at all? I don't, because I hope he earns a shed load of money. I just hope he doesn't get his legacy tarnished by even being knocked down by Jake Paul, because there is a difference in being 27 or 37 and 57. You do not have the physical capabilities, in my view, anymore, in spite of the fact that he looks great on the pads with Rafael Cordero whenever you see the clips at King's MMA. You've got 40 seconds to answer this before we close today.
I always had a great respect for Jake Paul, only for the fact that he's took the sport seriously, and he's been disciplined, and he's you know, he's fought a couple of guys. He's never fought a real guy yet. He's fought old MMA. You know, but he's gone through a few challenges that were not easy. But I'd lose a great respect to try and fight a 60-year-old man and take his legacy from a 60-year-old man. I think that's
Draw. We need a draw then, don't we?
I think it's disrespectful, but I think I think he's bit off the wrong. I think he's bit off more than he could chew, because I think Mike will beat Jake Paul in his sleep. I think he'd be too big, too strong, too fast.